I'm going to try to have this without the headset live from Closter. For some reason, get some bad background noise. Good morning. I'll have to improvise. So I wanted to, as we get started here, I wanted to talk about all the negative thoughts that we have and the challenges with our current environment. And then I want to go through one by one and reconcile those to where we are. So obviously, the first one that I would bring up is, interest rates rising, cost people more to move in. I don't know if anybody had noticed some of the tech real estate stocks have taken a pretty big nosedive, and that was based upon some forward-looking projections of the market softening. Did anybody catch that? Redfin and Zillow came up with some not so great forecasts for our future. Anyone?
We did come here. But
Okay.
I want to prepare for that appointment that you did.
Hold on. So Galena is here. We're going to do a PSA announcement. Now, Galena, how many listing appointments from door knocking in the past 2 months?
About 7 or 8.
7 or 8 listing appointments.
And I got about 7 or 8 cold calls. Actually more. I just scheduled 2 more appointments this morning. Just this morning.
And how long did we go? Like an hour and a half?
9:30. No, not even.
When we were talking about hour and 15 minutes.
And the last 3 doors, I was like, no, I give up. And he got me an appointment on the last door.
All right. So there's real life proof. You can't.
And I'm going there today.
You can't fake the smile. Anyway, the stocks of Redfin and Zillow kind of plummeted based upon both of them coming up with similar soft forecasts for buyer demand in summertime. So I figured this was appropriate. And when I was talking to Mr. Garber there, he was telling me that that was a subject that was recurring in his environment as well. So what challenges are there besides interest rates rising and maybe affordability? Anybody? Robert, you've been dealing with this. If nobody chimes in, you got to share with me what you've been dealing with.
So of course, there's the recurring story about how there's not very little inventory.
Okay, affordability, inventory. What about have we seen a lot of people buying with cash lately? Robert, have you seen a lot more cash in the market?
Yes.
Now, what do you think happens when your investment portfolio starts to dwindle down? There's less cash in the market, right?
I would think.
And I remember early on in my career, I had somebody who was invested heavily in the .com era in the early 2000s. And that's where their down payment was coming from. And unfortunately, they were waiting to liquidate because the market was doing so well at a certain point in time. And then, Robert, what happened is it took like a 30% haircut. He's like, oh, I'm going to try to delay closing until it comes back. Another haircut. And next thing you know, he had to borrow from mom to be able to close on the house. So, and Bruce, you probably had some stories where people haven't liquidated in time, right? So I think when investment values decline, that puts a challenge on our environment. What other challenges do you have? How about you, Ron, down in Florida? Are you able to chat? Anybody?
I'm sorry, I had my mic off. Well, I don't think I'm pretty nervous with this interest rate hike about buyers being able to afford this some of the homes. But don't you think, and this is kind of out to everybody, but don't you think that prices may kind of neutralize a little bit now, because it's going to be harder to get loans at these big numbers? with people having to pay a higher interest rate.
So what you're talking about is the good old fashioned supply and demand, right?
Pretty much, yes.
When the interest rates go up, people with a certain budget can only afford to pay X, and the insanity might come to a slowdown, right?
That's what I think.
Okay. So
I also think that we're going to see adjustable rates again. Where there's a way, they will find it.
Is that true, Bruce?
It is. I just think that, sorry, I lost you guys. I just think that the narrative on rates is really, rates, we've sold tons of houses when rates were 6.5. And in reality, all of these interest rate increases by the Fed are all short-term money, and they're designed to slow the economy and kind of, create, unfortunately, what might be a recession because it's a little too late. But, at the end of the day, interest rates, this is all built in. So I don't know that if there's an appetite for adjustables to become more aggressive, that's fine. But, getting into 5% down adjustables and 10% down adjustables, that's not out there. There's some 20% down in jumbo adjustables. But I think that the mortgage market has already seen these increases. And I think that it's actually as rates go up even more and more, which we're hoping they do from a mortgage standpoint, short-term rates, as the Fed keeps raising rates, eventually it's going to slow inflation and mortgage rates will come down. So they could go up a little bit more, but we went up 400 basis points in 100 days. So I think it's already built in. I think it's just a matter of planning.
So Bruce, lender talk, you're talking about 400 basis points in price or 400 basis points in yield?
In other words, well, both, right? So in other words, mortgage rates went from about 2 7/8 to 6 in some cases between December 31st and a few weeks ago. Rates have kind of started to level off and trickle down a little bit, kind of more ebbs and flows like they used to be. The Fed's buying less, but the idea that when the Fed raises the interest rates, it's really a tricky dynamic for people to understand because it's just media, but that's not what mortgage rates are based on. It's based on short-term money, and mortgage rates are long-term bonds. So it doesn't have a direct correlation. In fact, it typically what happens is when the Fed raises rates, once it starts to work, I mean, unfortunately today, April, well, it's a good thing, but it's bad for rates. But the April employment, the jobs report came out today, and they were expecting about 400,000 new jobs created, and it was 428,000. So that was positive economic news in the face of this hike. And it's like, geez, we obviously they have to keep raising a little more to slow things down. So until that happens, you're going to see rates move. But yesterday rates went down a little bit, then they went up. And so the rate movement's already happened is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not going to go up some more, but it's normalized. The jump was huge from 2 7/8 to almost 6. That already happened.
Gotcha. So, and Bruce, just to give some insight for
and if there's 428,000, if the consensus was the country was going to create 400,000 new jobs last month, and it's 428,000, then that means they got to raise rates more because there's still going to be inflation. There's still a need for stuff. People are still going to work. Not that we don't want people to go to work, but unfortunately, that's how this country works. You got to keep the balance. You got to, if things they cost too much money and everything's too good, it's $10 for gas. So you have to kind of lower it and keep it in line.
So the Federal Reserve has a mandate to achieve full employment and manage and keep inflation under control. And you're talking about it, Bruce. It manages those two levers, right? So if the economy gets overheated, kind of like turns the air conditioning
It's
on.
the thermostat, exactly right.
It tries to slow it down by raising the interest rate so that things don't get out of control. We don't have these massive bubbles, right? They'd rather have a little bit of an adjustment than a massive burst.
And as a result of what they didn't do it earlier in the equation, you could say because of the pandemic or whatever, that's why rates move so quickly because they should have done it earlier. That's why the jump was so huge.
And just so that, for those of you who are interested, when the Federal Reserve basically lowered the short-term interest rate to 0, it lost its ability to help lower mortgage rates. So what the Federal Reserve did was built up a balance sheet, and they started buying and investing in mortgage-backed securities, and that deflated, and what many would say artificially, right, deflated interest rates, Bruce.
And I think the best analogy we could all remember if we were back in the business in 06, or, when the market fell apart last time, that was more of a housing bubble and recessionary things. But what happened is, instead of the Fed bailing out banks this time, what they did was they bought mortgage securities and they bailed out the consumers. So as a result of doing that, the market wasn't reacting normal. Short-term rates were down. The Fed was buying all the money. This is where the market wants to be, where we are now. The Fed was buying artificially. So until things change, you're going to see things kind of be like this. Yeah, they could go up or down a little bit, but that craziness is over, because I shouldn't say it's over, but we certainly hope it's over.
So, just so everybody understand, like, I think the reason interest rates are rising is because the housing and the general economy is doing so well.
Positive economic news makes mortgage rates go up. Negative economic news makes mortgage rates go down.
So it's kind of a mixed story. I mean,
Correct.
I want to get all the
positive jobs report today, for example, more jobs than we thought. That's not great for rates. The Fed raising rates the other day, and possibly, hey, the economy is going to slow, the stock market will make it beat up. That would help rates, but unfortunately, with a good jobs report today, it leveled off. So we want negative economic news for rates, but you also don't want to have negative economic news for buyers, because you lose buyers too. So it's a balance.
Right. So I want to put everything out on the table here. And Robert, if there's anything that you're hearing in the field, or any of our leaders or anybody wants to put anything out there, I want to basically dissect it, and I want to get it out of our head so that we can move forward. So that's basically the gist of what today is.
So Rob, one of the other things that I've been hearing from agents is the fact that their buyers are getting really frustrated and wanting to stop looking now and wait for rates to come down and prices to come down.
So, I want to look at what my text message for today was here, because I think I said something about getting people to take immediate action, or to take action. And this is where our words really matter, because when people are fearful, what do you think they do, Robert?
They hunker down.
Right. It's like a deer in the headlight, right? When the deer in the headlight sees the headlight and the car is coming, does the story end up well?
No.
It usually doesn't end up well for the driver or the deer, right? So we have to consider that deer in the headlight scenario here, where people are frozen because of the dynamics of the market, and that's not going to be a good thing for them, and it's certainly not going to be a good thing for us. And ultimately, it's not a good thing for the economy, because if houses aren't selling, people aren't buying furniture. They're not doing home improvements. They're not that money like cycles through the economy multiple times. So today's the preview is a review of how to get both buyers and sellers to take action despite geopolitical unrest and rising interest rates. Okay. Now, nobody even put that down there, like the overall uncertainty of the world, right? I mean, when I was driving up here, I saw diesel gas is like $6.50 a gallon. That used to be $2 a little over a year ago. The shortages of supplies. I was listening to CNBC on my way here, and there's shortages of lots of things beyond the obvious computer chips. They were saying there's shortages of baby formula on Squawk Box this morning. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and we need to be the person that provides guidance as to how do we navigate through this. Okay. And if we use the visual of, all right, everything's moving, here comes the headlight, does our client, the deer, freeze, or do they take action? Okay. And, Warren Buffett, I think most of you probably know who Warren Buffett is. Warren Buffett says the time to be afraid is when everybody is brave, and the time to be bold is when everybody is afraid. Okay. Now we have this little bit of a window where people are trying to reassess what's going on. Interest rates are going up. Will there be a soft landing? Will prices moderate? Will there be a crash? Are you guys hearing your clients or even your peers talking about our is the real estate market set up for a crash? Is anybody hearing that? Or is it just me? So Marwan, you've been around for more than 2 years. 2.5. He's got 2.5 years selling experience. So when somebody says to you, Marwan, geez, I'm a little nervous. Is the market going to crash? How do we answer? How do we answer? Who has a good answer for that question? Okay, Robin, buyers and sellers don't feel that way. Marwan, do you think some of your clients feel like there might be a crash
I
ahead?
hear it from somebody who's on the fence. They're not serious, but I have serious clients that don't invest and they're looking to buy. That's it.
No.
They're not afraid of what's going on right now. Even if it's going on, they want to buy.
I think if you look at the guy from Facebook, he was like very famous back in 2000, the last crash. He sold his house at the absolute height of the market. He bought it back for millions more. Is big finance guy out in California.
Okay.
This listing here, they're saying first month 2 and security deposit. So that's not last month, that's first month.
Securities.
Ron, you got to
So
mute.
and month 2 is social security.
I tell my people the interest rates are lower than what they're gonna be, so the houses are gonna be cheaper, but if you're paying more, the interest rates.
I muted everybody. So if you want to talk, unmute.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. So
So
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this article, it's like a lot of people have been referencing it. And it's this guy, he's back in the last crash, he made like $3 million selling his own house and buying it back because he timed it right. So now he's getting ready to list his house. And there's a couple like that. If you follow like Ricky Carath and some of the like Real Deal articles, they're saying like they're calling this basically the final inning. You know that we're gonna go out in September and then.
So there are always doomsdayers, right? And I will just tell everybody this, you know, because somebody predicted the timing right last time, don't follow them again. You know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And if you go and look at who sold their house at the peak, you know, it's not that they had, you know, exceptional intelligence. It's just that they probably had a hunch and they probably got lucky. You know, I listened to a little bit of Warren Buffett talk at his shareholder meeting, and he said, you know, you can't time the market. He's like, I don't know, the guy's like 190, and he, you know, and he said you can't time the market. All kidding aside, him and his partner together, I think they said they were 192 years old, the two of them. So you can't time the market. But let's take a look at affordability. Okay. You know, rates are, you know, historically lower than average. Okay, you know, they've gone up a lot. There's a little bit of a shock factor there, but I still think, you know, we see a lot of people putting more cash down in a lot of instances, and even people that were going FHA, you know, having the ability to put more money down to get their offers accepted. Okay, I've seen that occur. I'd actually helped an agent who was out of town for a couple of days to negotiate an offer, and we had 44 offers. Okay. And to me, that doesn't tell me that the market's in trouble, and that property, I think 75 or 80% of them were over ask price. And, you know, as you can imagine, many were substantially over ask. That doesn't feel like the market is in trouble.
But are you seeing, so Rebecca and I have been talking about this a lot. Are you seeing, maybe it's just our area, but we're doing a lot of best and final, and I can recall about 5 or 6 off the top of my head, where they get best and final and they're getting exorbitant, I mean, way above everything else, 3 or 4 offers that really stand out. And then they're having 3 or 4 of their top offers back out. They're still getting above asking, don't get me wrong, like the deals that they're getting are still above asking, they're still good, but we're seeing a lot of buyer's remorse that aren't even going fully under contract.
Okay, so Lisa's mentioning that they're seeing some, you know, 2, 3, or 4 of the higher offers and highest and best are pulling out and drawing the conclusion that it's buyer's remorse. I have another theory, which could be a combination of the two. But I've seen people looking to buy a house make offers on 3 or 4 properties, knowing that there is so much demand that, I'm offering with Zach, Marwan, and Rebecca. And if I win Rebecca's, but I also win Marwan's, it's not a buyer's remorse. It's like I was hedging my bets. Okay, so it could be a combination of the two. But anyway, when there's still, how many offers are you seeing in those
So
cases?
these are, like, the one you were telling me, I know there was 3, the one you told me, then the one with CW, I think it was about 4, right, they went to 4.
I
And then
did,
they took
one of
his.
my clients, I did 3 offers one day,
Mhm.
but 2 accepted.
So Marwan had
He
3.
has a choice, which one you like.
So Marwan made 3 offers. Yeah, but that's exactly what we're talking. That's not buyer's remorse. That's buyers kind of getting a little bit of leverage.
Exactly.
Because next week the rates might be up higher, so if you
Can I ask a question to Bruce? Bruce, do you think the rate hikes are going to last a long time, 6 months?
I think it's going to boil down to when the inflation starts to drop. So
Exactly.
the idea they talked yesterday about doing 0.75%.
I can't hear you, my man.
Tell me which one is the most.
I can't hear.
Usually hold off 24 hours.
Let me answer that. So the biggest indicator that we can see as to when the rise in rates is starting to work will show up in employment. So when employment starts to come down a little bit, the stock market can, come and go. It could get crashed, but could get beat up a little bit. We've already seen corrections. But when the economy starts to, when you see employment start to not continue to grow, like for example, to Rob's point right now, 2022 wages are still going up 3.3%. So, even though rates are going up, even though prices are going up, affordability, even though rates have gone up a lot, they've kind of gone to where they probably should be, and they should, hopefully when inflation gets under control, be able to stay in this range or come down. The challenge is that when is inflation going to get under control, Ron? So how many more cuts does it take? I actually think the problem is if they make too big of a cut, then everything falls apart. So they just have to gradually do it. And we're hoping that I think that if they raise it the amount they said this year, it probably won't happen until October, November before they finish. It really should start to affect employment, and it should start to affect the market. And then you're going to see rates probably come down, because then they have to switch it back and then lower it, a thermostat. They got to, stimulate stuff again. The only thing I would say to Rob's point though is until there's less of a demand, values are not going to drop. I mean, it might stop going up like crazy, but they're not going to crash. I mean, there's still so many more people there's millions of people that are either going to go get laid out paying a lot of money, rent a house, or they're going to buy a house. There's just tons of demand. So, I was at a meeting at your Tinton Falls office the other day, and Maria had a whole list. Even though the inventory was down, the increase in sales the price was all up. So there's still demand there, even though there's less inventory. There's still demand. There's still buyers. So until that changes, I mean, I don't see the market crashing. I just see, obviously, who cares if it slows up with appreciation? As long as it doesn't crash, we don't care. We could sell with lower, more reasonable appreciation and more buyers. We don't care.
Well, I'm thinking that maybe, like Robert was saying, that like a lot of buyers might say, I'm going to hold back.
They do.
Wait till everything settles down.
But Ron, this is why we're here today. That's the exact, on cue. That's the reason we're here today. Because we want to have a dialogue for when the buyer says, hey, let me take a pause and see what happens. Okay. And I'm not saying that we're going to twist people's arms, but I want to say we can't not have an answer to that question. Okay. Or to that comment. Does that make sense, Ron?
Yeah, I think we need to come back with something positive so that they understand that, if they wait, it could be more of an issue down the road. But right now, take advantage of what we have. It's like Bruce says. I mean, hell, I was selling properties when there were 10, 12% interest rates, 13% interest rates. So that's even at 6, it's still not a bad market. So you just got to kind of make them feel comfortable and educate them, I guess. Let them know that.
And there's so many more
maybe
buyers than we ever had to educate. There's so many more buyers, and we've never had 3 million buyers in the market. So there's so many more buyers to educate. And we came from such a low environment that it really is just our responsibility as professionals to be able to explain it, because people just don't know any better. And there's 3 million people need a place to live.
Let me ask you. So if you're buying a house, say for $450,000 with an interest rate at 6, comparable to 2 3/4, how much extra money a month would that be approximately? in the buyer's, coming out of the buyer's
I
pocket.
mean, I mean, depending on, you said, did you give a price? 450,
450.
Probably about, it's probably, I mean, I could figure it out exactly, but it's,
$700?
$450,000 on a loan amount.
No, on a purchase price. So let's say 350 loan amount times
Okay.
3%, it's like what, $10,000, $800 a
It's
month.
15, 17. And if you do the at three, it's 15, 17, and at 6, it's 21.58. So you're talking about a, $640 increase. But again, I
In their-
can't
in their
emphasize
payment.
enough that there's still, the people that the affordability is still there. We still have tons of people that are buying. They're just afraid if it's going to continue to go up and the price is going to continue to go up. And you know what? It looks like the prices are going to continue to go up because there's still more people that want houses.
All right, so Ron, I want to have this conversation with you, and then I saw somebody put in the chat like, hey, let's have a dialogue on how we handle this. Now, I want to look to some people that have been in a market that wasn't this hot, and like Robin, do you remember when a seller was happy when they got one decent offer, right, instead of having 9? Right? Yeah, I mean, in a normal market, those of you who are new in the business, an average marketing time was, 3 to 10 weeks. 45 days was the norm. People could come in on a Saturday and see 7 houses and decide that they like 2 and make one offer, and that was how it used to be. Yeah.
That was like 2011 to 2013, Rob, last buyer's market. So that was a while ago.
Screen fixed.
Hold on. Wait, hold on. Hold on. I want to just take us back in time for a little bit because it's not always so great. Because Robin made some really great points. When they came out and they looked at stuff on Saturday, they say, "Hey, let me think about it. We'll come out by next Saturday and we'll let you know what we want to do." And in many cases, that house was still available, right?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay, so that would.
Available for 3 to 4 weeks easily.
Yeah.
And then you took 3-4 days to negotiate.
Yeah, you made an offer. They took a day to get back, right? Now we're talking about, right? So let's rephrase or let's re-examine how this is looking now, right? So all these buyers, Ron, that you had that were like dying to be able to get a piece of property, now there are some people taking a pause, waiting to see what's going to happen in the market. And if I was to role play with you, Ron, I'd say, hey, Ron, I know you're a little bit hesitant. Rates are going up a little bit. You're a little bit nervous about the market. But to be honest with you, Ron, you've been telling me for months that, you wanted to get an opportunity to maybe win a property. Now is the time. There might only be 4 or 5 offers instead of 30. If you want to get into the market now is the time. What do you think? You want to wait until everybody gets back in again and you have to compete with 40, or would you like to take an opportunity to exploit this pause?
I like that a lot.
Okay.
That is an awesome technique.
So secondly, if anybody was paying attention to Bruce, Ron, do you know why interest rates are rising now?
No, I don't.
Interest rates are rising now to curb inflation and to slow down the appreciation of things, which are still appreciating. Now, Ron, you've been watching the market. Like, let's just say that you were buying a house. When you bought your existing house 6 years ago, what were the rates?
Oh, 6 years ago, probably like 4%, 4.5%.
4.5. And then when you bought your first house, Ron, what were interest rates back in the 80s?
Yeah, they were back 11%.
11%. So if we take an opportunity to buy during this pause, and then when the interest rates work themselves out, what do most homeowners do when rates get lower after they're in a house?
Refinance.
They refinance, right? So then you get to take advantage of the lower rates, but now you've been able to find that property because some of the competitors have taken a little bit of a pause. But under no circumstance is the market soft now. But now we can get you that opportunity to find something. So this would be one of the ways that we have that dialogue. So if it takes a year or two, right, at $600 extra a month, that's $15,000 in 2 years. If the property goes up by 3%, you're going to be ahead of the game. If it goes up by 10%, you won the lottery, Ron. And most importantly, you get into a house for your family. How does that sound?
And we could give you data to support that. When you could do that and you could give buyers, it's a great opportunity for them. And some people, they're afraid to buy, but there's plenty that aren't. And when you give them that data, it's not you saying it, it's the data. I can forward it to you. There's data that shows that this changes. Not so much rates coming down, but that the whole thing with, you know, how many more buyers there are than sellers. I mean, it's all factual information. So it'll help them feel comfortable that there's opportunity for them not to compete as many people right now if there's people that are afraid. If there's 3 million people trying to buy a house, who cares if 1 million become afraid? There's still 2 million people. It doesn't matter. There's only 1 million houses on the market. It's actually a good thing.
So,
You just gotta find the right ones.
I think positioning yourself as this is an advantage
Yes.
is the way to direct it. Like Rob said, is the way to direct it to the consumers, that instead of a negative, now we have a great opportunity. We can finally, you know, get that house you want. And even if you're paying, like you said, so $600 more a month, 15,000 over 2 years, it's better than having to pay 40,000 to beat out one of those other 40 people that are trying for this house. It balances. There's always an advantage.
And if the rates were lower, appreciation would be even higher, because then affordability goes up and then the seller's going to have more price. So you're right. There's a whole narrative. You just have to get your ducks in a row and have the facts. But yes, I agree. I mean, again, it's because of the amount of people. There's so much demand.
Bruce, I think it was like 2018 was a pretty strong housing market. And I could be wrong, but I think the rates then were about 6 or 6.5. Would you be able to tell?
I just lost.
4.5 to in
They were
2018 was a strong housing market. They're pretty much where they are right now, Rob. They were in the mid fours. By 19, they went down to 3.9, but they were in the mid to high fours. So yeah, they're a little higher, but yeah.
So, you know, has anybody had the experience of even trying to find rentals being really challenging and multiple offers and
Where's
and
our
virtual?
rooms on the MLS side? Have you guys seen that? We're now on the MLS, at least in Bergen County on NJMLS, there's rooms that we're renting out because people can't even get apartments.
Okay. So let me go ahead, Maurice.
I just wanted to say something on a side note. Totally nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I've been chasing this FSBO since January. It listed the property at $750. Today it's sold for $452. The comps were $660. Horrible. I've been chasing him for 6 months and he sold it for $452.
We got to work on your dialogue.
I know. Exactly. Something was wrong.
All right. So anyway, let me ask this practical question. We have 90 people on. We have a room full here in Closter, so 100 plus people. Does anybody see the market being soft? I mean, we have multiple bids. We can't find rentals. There are rooms on the market, right? So the market is not soft. The interest rates
have a lot of crybabies.
There's a
lot of crybabies.
The interest rates have already gone up. Okay, you know, are we allowing the customer, the consumer, to program our thoughts?
Yes.
Are we allowing, you know, some pundit on a blog to say, hey, the market's peaked, now's the time to get out? Or are we looking at what's before us? I mean, the markets are hyper local, right? I mean, what's happening in San Francisco doesn't matter to us here because this is our market. What's happening in San Francisco doesn't matter to Southeast Florida, does it, Ron? No. I'm just saying, like, the markets are, yeah.
It's a market for buyers. Can you get out of this conversation with sellers? Not only where are you going, but if you do have a place to go, when you want to sell, what is the peak that you can get the highest for your value? Because so for example, if I'm a seller and the buyer has X amount to spend and more of that is going to the bank as opposed to my pocket, now would be the time for me to, you know, sell. As a buyer, yes, there's going to be more inventory that's going to be coming up, but if there's still not enough inventory, getting it now and while the rates are lower is a different conversation. So I think the market's still strong, but for your sellers, it's a different conversation than you would with your buyers.
So I think you might be overthinking a little bit, or you were just a little bit verbose in the way that you shared your thoughts. But what I want to share with everybody is that if there's an if there is a qualified, let me just mute the rest of the group, hang on. If there is a motivated, reasonable, qualified buyer, okay, and they go on their own and they try to find a place, it's going to be damn challenging, okay? If you try to go to all the FISBOs, Zillow, open houses, if you build a relationship like somebody did with Marwan, who stepped out, he's putting another deal together, but Marwan had 3 offers he put out there and he got 2 of them accepted. Marwan is serving his client, okay? Because we have a strategy that we can provide the roadmap to getting into a house. The roadmap is no longer, hey, you know, how are we going to negotiate the price down substantially? The roadmap is to be honest with people, to identify the opportunity, and then to execute, right? Does it make any sense to like lowball in this market and make 50 offers? No, you're just going to burn out.
Nobody lowballs it these days. Asking or above asking. No,
some are putting in.
Really, I have not had one client.
Right. So I mean, you know, if somebody, I mean, if you, right, but I mean, right, but overall, but overall, right now, the market is still extremely competitive, right? And if the market's extremely competitive, means that there's a lot of buyers, right? What do we need to be doing?
Getting listings.
We need to be getting.
We're missing.
Hold on. You know, Robin's running the next mastermind. We need to be getting listings, okay? Because you still want to have listings.
When you're having, I guess that's my point, is when you're having a conversation with people who are like, maybe hold out, look how much if I would have last year, I could have gotten for now. As far as for the conversation you're having with your sellers, which are very different conversations than you're having with the buyers.
Rob, you know, we really can't hear what you're saying.
Can't hear.
Lisa was saying, you know, what if a seller says, you know, if I would have sold a year ago, I would have left money on the table. Maybe I should hold out even longer. Hold on. All right, hold on.
I think what's coming out in the newspapers and on the TV and everything, we can use to work to our advantage to tell the sellers that, you know, they really need to have a realtor assist them with this.
But
Because we become more viable in this scenario.
So Colleen, let me ask you, what percentage of sellers you think buy after they sell? I'm just going to take just an informal survey. What would you think? Well, one at a time. What would you say, Colleen?
I would say almost 98%.
80, 90, 70?
100%.
Okay, so it's interesting. Like Rebecca's finding a bunch that are looking to sell and kind of take their money off the table and go into rentals. And what's the number? Is it higher than 50% that are buying, right? Yeah. So we have 70 to 98% is what the consensus is. So okay. So right, but what I'm saying is, if it's north of 50%, that means most of the sellers are actually going to be buyers, right? So does it really make that much of a difference? Not really, right? If now is the time to do something, you know, yeah, if you're downsizing, you can maybe make a little bit more and overpay on a little bit lower of a price. But in reality, that's really, that argument doesn't hold a whole lot of water.
I had a buyer say that exact thing to me yesterday. One of the coil team buyers, exact same thing. They were selling at a different state and they were moving up to Seaside, or rather Spring Lake Heights or whatever. And that's exactly what he said. He said, the way I have to look at this, he was in a little bit of, pay a little more. So the way I have to look at this is I'm getting 100 grand more for my house than I would have. So even if the market drops a little bit, I'll deal with it. Now that's the extreme, but some buyers are really educated enough to be looking at it that way. And that's a narrative we need to put on it to explain it.
Well, but also
That's a good analogy.
to recognize the fact that unless they're planning to buy and sell in 2 years, I mean, if they're going to buy and live in the house for a period of time, real estate is cyclical. So if it starts to go down in 2 years, like everyone is saying, it's going to come back up during the period of time that they own the house.
You know, I asked him that question, Robin, to a little insight as to this guy. Maybe this is why he answered that way. He said, I'm going to end here. My kids are going to be taking my stuff out of the attic in a box when I leave this house. So he plans on staying there forever. So it really didn't matter. So good point.
Most people stay in a home. So, and real estate, when everything else is usually 10 years, they change. As long as you don't plan on selling right away, you're not gonna lose.
Okay, I question more or less. If you were asking people, they think it's slowed down any. I've been busy. I have some listings, which I know we don't have, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, and I'm working with 3 Zillow people. But I had an open house last week, and I got 30 people through in one day, and we're already under contract. And I got one coming up tomorrow, and already agents calling me wanting to get in there. But at the same time, the Zoom, maybe I got calls and didn't know it, but the Zoom is like died. I'm not the Zoom. The Zillow calls have just died. So it's interesting that those have died, but you have an open house. There's a million people trying to get in. Does that make sense? That's my question.
Well, that's because, so interesting observation, that's because the inventory is continue to remain low, which again, what clue does that give us? What clue does low inventory give us? It's a seller's market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Inventory remains low. So the narrative or the way that we respond to buyers that are saying, hey, maybe we should stay on the sideline, influences how people behave. Would you agree with that? Would you? Yeah, I mean, like the way that we respond. Well, I don't, Robert, would you agree with that?
Yes.
So if somebody says, hey, you know, interest rates are going up, you know, maybe I'm going to take a pause from buying, like the output, the result is highly dependent upon how we respond to that person. We go, oh yeah, why don't we just see what happens? Like, of course they're going to wait. But if you're like, you know, hey, you know what? Now is an opportunity, you know, maybe we'll have a better shot at getting some properties, because talking to my colleagues on our Friday morning call, instead of having 20 or 30 offers, there might be 6 or 8 offers on a property. Wouldn't you like to have the opportunity to buy now, Rob, where, you know, you'd be 1 out of 8 offers instead of 1 out of 40? You think that might help us? Right? Because the buyers, you know, a lot of us are praying for more inventory, but as Robin aptly put it, once there's more inventory, there's no urgency. You know, they go out 5 times with you. They're like, I'm not sure about that. We'll come back next week and see if maybe we'll make an offer. And then so love the market you're in. And I'd write that down. Love the market you're in, because this is a good market. Okay.
Well, Rob, isn't it the same as a seller that, I mean, from my perspective, when you guys go in and you meet with a seller that has some unreasonable expectation of what they could sell their house for and back in a different market, you guys either educated them, you tried to explain to them what the market showed they could buy it for, you've seen whether they were somebody worth your time. And if not, you use that 4-letter word next, and you didn't work with them. It's just reversed a little. This is where the buyers are. There's tons of buyers. You vet them, you educate them. If you can't convert them, you say next. I mean, isn't it kind of the same as that, just different swing, or no?
So Bruce, I would say that I had a very similar opinion, you know, probably 10, 12 years ago. Like, this buyer is unreasonable, that buyer is more reasonable, this one on the fence, reasonable, motivated, right? But I do think that part of their behavior is influenced by our interaction.
No doubt. No, I agree.
Okay.
I'm trying to educate them, but if they don't.
Correct. So if you skip the step of educating them and seeing if they, you know, if they're committed and motivated, right? You skip that step, then you might be throwing some good fish back into the lake.
I agree.
Okay, you might be losing some opportunities. But when a seller says, like to Lisa's point, hey, you know what, Lisa, if I would have listed with you a year ago, I would have lost $40,000. But you say, hey, but you know what, Lisa, you're going to be buying.
And not every single. So I have one coming up Monday, but every single one that I'm dealing with are investors or people who have multiple houses. They're not buyers. I have about 7.
Investors always.
I have about 7. So I finally got one Monday. One's coming up, but I have about 7, and I've been working a year on these people. I mean,
Right.
you know, I don't give up.
Right.
So I'm finally starting to crack them, but it's maybe we could have that conversation online, but it's a hard.
Well, let me just tell you a really humbling fact is that nobody can predict the market, right? And if you sold it and you got them top dollar in that particular moment in time, okay, that's where the market was, right? You've executed at a high level in that market. Now, if they were unfortunate and to say, hey, I could have been greedier and waited 6 months and you sold it for more, but what would have happened if the market would have crashed? Nobody knows. And I would say, Bruce, like, when you look at, from a lending perspective or a like a stock market perspective, right? The market doesn't even know where it's going, right? You get a piece of news. Is this good news? Is this bad news, right? I mean,
well, not only that, but it's based on what people talk and people's perceptions and fears and consumer sentiment and all that. I mean, so you're right, but then it's also wrong. Somebody typed in the chat, the unemployment figures could be off a little bit. She's 100%, or he or she, I forget, 100% right. I mean, it's all, people come back from COVID or whatever, but however the market interprets things is how it works. That's why it's so important to be able to educate people. Not every market do you have to do this, but we're fortunate this is a market where we can have a little platform to be able to give them the information they need. It's just going to make them feel more comfortable with us as real estate and mortgage professionals in all their endeavors in the future. It's almost a responsibility, in my opinion.
If you look at builders, the builders in South Florida have stopped paying us a commission. They will not pay realtors a commission anymore.
Got the tail wagging the dog over there.
GL Homes, Pulte, they've all stopped paying us commissions.
So when it switches, make sure you charge extra.
We got to get Eric Funk down there. He'll straighten them out.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Hey, Rob. I got a question for you. You mentioned Redfin and Zillow earlier that they were forecasting soft forecasts out there. And everyone knows that Zillow is flopped on their face by the buying of houses and trying to get into the real estate business. And now you're listening to forecasters all over. The Wall Street is down 10%. So, people think their investments are good, but real estate has gone up on an average of 4 or 5% every year over the last 60 years. I heard that from one of Bruce's statements earlier. So there's a lot of positives right now. And I think what Buffett is doing right now in buying and going out there is something that I'm telling my clients that right now, the buyers that have been hesitating. And I just got a buyer, just closed, just got under contract today for it. And he's been hesitating. You ready for this? He hasn't bought a property in 20 years. He thinks it's the right time. Take that to the bank. And when you're speaking to your buyers, let them know that our business is honestly at the bottom, not at the top. And no one can really forecast where we're at, like you said. So I'm going to forecast right here that we're seeing the bottom right now. As a matter of fact, 8 offers on a property, was actually, commonplace for the last year or so. We only got 2 or 3 that made sense, but they were the 2 or 3 out of those 8. There were only 2 or 3 that made sense anyway. So really things haven't changed all that much. And I agree with the guy who's sitting next to you. Market is strong. So just get out there.
So Eric, you remember like several years back, we used to do the call sessions, right? And it was all about the tone that we addressed somebody on the phone that gave certainty and confidence, right?
Yep.
And I would just advise everybody that we need to dig deep and we need to know exactly how we're going to respond when people give us these predictable objections. And when people are fearful, do they generally do the right thing? I'm going to ask you.
No. I don't think they do the right thing. I think people are always living in somewhat of a fear because they're scared to move forward by maybe the price of the houses are going to go collapse like it did back in 2008. But we're in a different time zone right now. Things are so different. It could, it may, but you got to have a place to live. I'm listening to the mortgage guys, and it's we're on the front lines. Let's put it that way. My buyers want a place to live, or they want a vacation property that they can afford right now. So why have fear if you want to enjoy your life? And it sounds simple, but it's true. If they're just going to listen to Redfin and Zillow, then we're not helping them understand the market at all.
All right. So Eric, I'm going to tell you that Redfin and Zillow I'm going to say that they might be accurate, but I'm going to give you the backup to that, right? So let's just say that Zillow and Redfin coming up with the same conclusions independently is probably a lot more accurate than their home buying program was, right? However, demand right now is so lopsided, right? Where you get 20, 30, 40, 50 offers on a listing. Is that healthy for our market? I'm going to ask you that, Eric. Is that healthy to get 40 offers on a property? Is it healthy for a buyer to have to put 3 or 4 offers just to try to get one accepted?
No, it massages the egos of the sellers. I will tell you that they're emboldened right now. That is going to change.
No, but you know what? Is the seller going to be disappointed with 5 offers or 8 instead of 40?
They're going to be happy with one great offer.
Right. It only takes one buyer, right? And if you're the buyer, it only takes your offer being accepted to be the only thing that matters, right?
Listen, I'll take a $200,000 down deal with someone who's got an 840 credit score, and they're only $20,000 over ask. They're perfect compared to someone who's 100 and they can't back it up. They don't have the, they're just looking to make an offer. So we have to be able to help and put our value, we have a certain value that we have to sell to our buyers and our sellers. And the value is that we're able to understand the market, understand the offers, and present them properly, and continue to sell at least one house a week.
Okay, so Eric, this is where I want you and everybody on this call to maybe grab a pen and just jot a few pointers, okay? Because when somebody is fearful and like, hey, I might want to sit on the sidelines, right? We're gonna have a dialogue, and it's gonna go something like this. And I'll use Robert as the role player here. Hey, Robert, I understand that you're a little bit concerned about the rising rates. I just wanted to share with you, in case you didn't know, why the rates are rising. Are you aware?
Sort of, but I'm not totally clear.
So Robert, basically what's happening is the Federal Reserve is trying to manage the inflation that we all see by raising the interest rates. And part of inflation is also housing prices going up, as you've seen, right? So the fact that interest rates are going up is going to put a few of the buyers on the sidelines. And I just want to make sure that you understand how this can be an advantage for us going into to be a buyer in this marketplace. Once the Federal Reserve and the banks get the inflation under control, what do you think is going to happen, Robert, once the inflation goes down to interest rates?
I think the interest rates are going to go down.
Yeah, I mean, no, and when inflation is put under control, you're very right. Historically, interest rates go back down, right?
Every single time since 1972. Every single time.
So Robert, if we bought now, right, and if it's in 6 months or 2.5 years, interest rates go down, and how long are you planning on staying in the house?
15 years.
15 years. What do you think that we're going to suggest that you do in 2 years or 2.5 years or 6 months when interest rates fall?
Refinance,
right? So I know that you and your spouse were saying that interest is going to cost you another $192,000 over 30 years, but in reality, that's probably going to be 6 months to 2 or 3 years. That makes sense? So I just want to take inventory to see if you're willing to take advantage of this opportunity with this short-term increase in interest rates to find that property and maybe have a little bit less competition now.
absolutely.
Right? And the tonality, the facts, like that's all fact-based stuff. And the difference between what I see most of our colleagues do is they tell the customer instead of asking them. So, why are interest rates rising? I asked the buyer, why are they rising? And they're rising to offset inflation. Once inflation is under control, Robert, what do you think interest rates are going to do? They're going to fall. Now, when the interest rates fall, and hopefully they come back to late 2021 levels, when they go back into the threes, low threes and high twos, what do you think you're going to do as a homeowner? You're going to refinance, right? So if you engage like that, I think that we take advantage of this increase in the interest rate environment, right? Because in reality, it's in all likelihood a short-term event.
And if you dummy down what inflation is, Rob, I'm finding a lot of buyers and they don't really understand inflation. Inflation is just when things are too hot and things cost too much money. And it's easy right now to tell them a gallon of gas could go to $10 if we don't slow things down. It's a really clear example because not everybody, the word inflation kind of is this word in obscurity. When you are tangibly and tell them things are too hot, too quick. The real estate market, gas is, things got to get slowed down. That's the best way to.
Is that because of supply?
It's because it's for a lot of things, because rates are low. It's because of the buyers have more buying power. It's because it could be from supply, it could be from anything. But the point is things are too hot and things are growing too fast, and that's got to be scaled down. The goal with our country, just to be honest, it's not a really good sign that every time since 1972 when they got inflation under control, they had lower rates. It really should be a little more steady. What happens is we keep screwing it up. Things get too hot, too cold, too hot. It should be a little more steady, but that's been our history as a country.
But Bruce, it's a thermostat. You know,
yes,
when things get
exactly.
too heated up, they put the air conditioning on. When things get too cold, the Fed puts the heat up and lowers rates and buys bonds. So
if you lived in Florida, it'd be nice and easy all the time. We live up here, so
what would be a standard? What would be a standard, interest rate that we should be at this point?
I don't think it matters, because if everything's going really well and there's no inflation, rates could rise, rates could fall. It's all about inflation. Rates just dictate what goes down. Rates dictate, money's money. The cost of money will always dictate what happens. So I'm gonna head this off because I think we're getting too far in the weeds. I think our conversations need to be simple, right? And our conversations need to be more about asking questions and leading them to a logical answer. Because I will tell you, Bruce, if we did a commercial building, they have significant prepayment penalties, they have defeasances. So when you buy an interest rate in a commercial property, you're stuck with it. You can't just refinance in 6 months and again in 6 months. Okay. In residential property, you have a tremendous advantage. There's no prepayment penalties. You have a couple of dollars in closing costs to do it. Sometimes, when things are great, lenders might even say, hey, instead of giving you 2 3/4, I give you 2 7/8. I'll pay all your closing costs. There are options like that are available to people based on the relationships that we have. So when we look at buyers and sellers, and I'm not trying to be hypocritical, but this is a great time for both, because as a seller, right, maybe there's a little bit of uncertainty that prices will not rise forever, right? So now that seller that Lisa was referring to over there that says, hey, maybe if I wait another year, I'll win again. That's akin to, all right, you won twice on the roulette wheel. You want to try again? You're going to keep trying until you lose all your money, right? So you want to take advantage of the market where we are right now, which is pretty healthy. Okay. We want to have conversations and not, not pointing and telling them. You want to ask them questions and figure out how we get them to take action. Everybody working with a buyer wishes there was less competition, right? I've been hearing that forever. There's a little bit less competition now, and don't let your motivated buyers be eliminated from the market because of fear. Don't let your buyers be eliminated from the market because of uncertainty. And I just want to say, who was here from the beginning of the call? And Bruce, you were on the beginning, right? Did you happen to see the Galena dance? She's looking right over here. I was going to say, if she's knocking on doors that happy, that excited, who the hell's not going to want to hear what she has to say? She looked very excited. Yes.
Well, Galena, was it 7?
I went to about 7 appointments. I didn't get them all,
7.
but I have 3 that's coming back I have 1 in a month, the other ones in the summer, 1 in the fall.
So basically, Galena has a pipeline. She's been in 7 people's houses. She has appointments, which many of us on this call do not have. And you know what? It's inconvenient. She's out there door knocking. And to be honest, she lights up like a candle when she's door knocking, just like that little dance she did here. Because, you know, she talks to people and finds out, like, you know, we had phenomenal engagement with people, you know, telling them about the neighbors, how long they've been here. And if you kept a tab and you actually followed up when people said, like, hey, you know what, you know, I can't tell you how many times it's like, oh, my youngest is a junior this year. When they graduate next year, we're going to be putting it on the market and going somewhere. Now, most of us, we write that down on a little piece of paper. We throw it in our office, then we throw it away in 6 months, and we go on we look at the hot sheet and say, "Damn, Rebecca, I knocked on that person's house a year and a half ago." And the question is, have you kept in touch? Do you have a system? Okay, now is the time to start building those systems, building those relationships. I know, Eric, Eric, you still there? Put your camera on. All right, Eric, share with the group, if it wasn't raining, what we were going to do.
We were going to go and door knock around our listing that's having an open house tomorrow. We already have an offer of
And Eric, hold on, Eric. Well, what did I tell you we do when it rains?
Get an umbrella.
All right, so that's the difference from the people committed and the people who are committed. Eric's like, I thought we're canceling today. I'm like, no, do you have an umbrella? So anyway, that's just a different perspective on how you look at the way things occur, right? So if you want to get in somebody's, you know, house that's looking to sell, you're standing there in the rain. Oh, come and take a look at my house. Get out of the rain. Anyway, that's how I look at it. But
Hey Rob, I want to tell you something. Do you remember we went out last weekend and there was a peacock? Okay, so wait, that's interesting. So I took that picture of the peacock that you took of me in front of the house, and I sent it to one of the clients that I wanted to target in that area. She saw the picture and she says, "Oh, that's our famous peacock." Do you know that I'm taking her out to show a house? I wanted to list her house and show her other houses. We're looking at a $1.5 million house on Monday.
I gotta say that one had me there, Eric. I rang the doorbell. And the lady opened up the window. I'm like, "Is this your peacock?" Yeah, it was walking.
That was Hoboken, right?
No, that was in Morris Plains. Everybody here, I'll share with you the peacock. But I mean, anyway, so Eric took that picture and he put it out there, and he engaged with somebody. So that's just, yeah, being creative. So this is a pause. This is an opportunity for everybody on this call to have more valuable conversations with your people, to not be intimidated or not be discouraged by the rise in interest rates. It's a call to get off your duff and do something. If you're looking to buy, it's a opportunity to have a little bit less competition. And you now all have the right to say, I was on a call with over 100 of my colleagues on our Friday morning call, and everybody's talking about the market is still very robust. Some people are taking a step back, but there's still multiple offers on properties. Wouldn't you rather compete against 8 instead of 12 or 8 instead of 40 offers? If that's your mindset, that's what we're going to do. And when the inflation gets under control, what's going to happen to interest rates, Zach, when inflation is under control? They're going to go down. And if you're going to be in this house for 15 years, what are we going to do when interest rates go down? And if the market's robust, what's going to happen to the price, the value of your house between now and when you refinance? It's going to go up, right? So you might even be able to take some cash out and, you know, and have no money in it, or do some improvements without having to dig in your pocket. I mean, it's a great opportunity. We need to control the narrative in the way that we speak to people, and not let the media, not let the customer, to Eric's point, not let Zillow and Redfin, you know, determine what's happening before us in our own world.
So Rob,
they'll listen more now too, Rob. They'll listen because they want to hear, they want to know what's going on. We found they listen more than they ever have because they don't understand. They're desperate. So they are listening more than ever.
They're looking for guidance. And I like what Rob said about refinancing and have extra money. So when they have the extra money, they can buy an investment property, right, Rob?
Exactly. So Bruce, they're desperate for leadership.
That's why they listen. If they listen to all these narratives on TV, that's what they're going to hear. If they get the facts, they can base their own decisions based on their own experience.
All right, before we go, if you watch 3 experts, do you think they're all going to be in sync, Bruce?
In fundamentals, absolutely.
Well, I think that you're going to have one person saying it's the best market ever. You're going to have another guy saying that it's going to continue to rise, right? And another person can say, oh, it's going to level off. Would you agree with me on that? I mean, everybody knows that rates are going to be going up. The expert there, but they can't predict housing. Okay, and rates are probably continuing to are rising because housing prices are still going up. You want to have hard assets during inflation, right? You don't want to have your money in the bank getting 2%. Yes, Robin.
And the reason why is because if your money's getting 2% and it costs $10 for a gallon of gas, you're going backwards.
Yep.
If it costs more, your money isn't worth shit. So you got to put your money somewhere.
Hold on, Bruce. Let's let Robin speak. Go ahead.
But for us that have been in the market for 15+ years, people, regardless of rates and what's happening economically, people are still going to need to sell. Some people are still going to need to buy. There's always going to be some market. And maybe when the market gets tough, there might be less realtors in it.
That always happens.
Yes, because people came into the market because the market is hot, and when it becomes a lot of work, people will go back to their other jobs or find them.
I couldn't agree with you more. We've seen, in our careers, we've probably seen that happen 3 to 5 times, right? Where it's not so easy to be a successful. I would even say now it's not easy to be a successful agent, but it's not so glamorous when the market's down.
I think the hardest part about some of the hardest part about this market right now, because we've been through that pandemic, the economic pressures. People can be very, very difficult. They're very stressed and have a lot of anxiety.
So
Rob,
go ahead.
For me or
Go ahead, Robert.
If I could just mention 2 things, 3 things. One, we all know about it's important to listen more than talk. And I had a person call me that saw my listing in Randolph, and they spoke to the seller there, who was nice enough to give them a rave review about me. So he called and he said he wanted to talk to me about selling his house. So I'm talking to him for just a couple of minutes, and he says, yeah, I really don't want to do anything for like another year or 2. I'm not really sure. I said, unless somebody, is willing to offer me, like a big chunk of change, then I'd move right now. So I said, so we need to have a conversation right now. And I'm going there this afternoon to have that conversation, that maybe it's not going to be a year or 2, and maybe it's going to be now because the market is primed for what he's really in his heart looking for. The second thing is that some of you may have seen on the close page for RE/MAX Select Agents, a post that I put up yesterday about going to the ATM yesterday morning at 7:30 in the morning, and the guy ahead of me opening the door for me and saying, good morning, Robert. And I said, well, good morning, although I did not know who he was. And I said, I'm sorry, but have we met? And he said, well, I know you're a realtor in the area, and I don't have a lot of time, but how's the market? And thinking that he didn't have a lot of time, I just said to him, are you looking to sell or you're looking to buy? And he said, I'm looking to sell. So I said, well, then this is a great market for you, and we should get together so that I can talk to you about the process and how we're going to get the most amount of money for you in the shortest amount of time. So I'm meeting with him tomorrow. And the third thing I wanted to say is that in markets that are difficult, and I know this because I became a realtor in 2006, just before the market crashed. It's the agents who are positive and have an understanding of how to make people understand that there is an opportunity now given whatever the circumstances are, those are the agents who are going to be the successful agents. Remember, we all talk about how 80% of the business is done by 20% of the agents. Well, this is the time for us to be the 20% of the agents. We have a positive dialogue and we have the professionalism that people need to hear and the leadership that they want so that they can take advantage of this.
Yep. Robert, thank you. And final thoughts, control the narrative, control the conversation. Don't let anybody else into your head. Everybody have a productive, awesome weekend, and thanks for spending the hour together here. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Rob.